Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and this is the Cinefiles. Today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Eric Cohen, Jeff Galashaw, and Mike Foltz. Today we're going to be continuing a discussion...
That's not Mike Foltz.
Well, he's over there.
Hey, that's Mike Foltz.
All right. All right, today we're going to...
I'm not black, and I'm not proud.
Well, neither am I. Anyway, let's get to discussion today. Today we're going to be continuing off from a conversation we had a while ago about the Masters of Horror film series, and today we're going to be discussing the remaining films that we didn't get to discuss earlier around. We're going to start it off with Chocolate, which was directed by the series creator and written by him as well, and it's entitled Chocolate, and it was directed by Mick Garris and stars Henry Thomas as a person who has an extra sense that allows him to connect with a person, I guess you could say, who's kind of psychotic, would you say?
Well, the whole premise is he can see through the eyes of someone else, and you're not quite sure. He's falling in love with this person. She's obviously a female. He can see who she is because whenever she looks in the mirror, he can see who that person is. And then later on in the story, you find she kills somebody. So he goes out of his way to try to find her now. She lives in Canada.
Of course.
Which I love because the series is shot in Canada, so of course, why not make it Canada?
That's Henry Thomas from E.T.
Who I usually always like as an actor, but in this one I feel the entire show was
like
very...
him as an actor?
I think he's been good in a few things that I've seen him in. I mean, he's great in E.T., of course, but he's also very good in Gangs of New York, even though the movie is not that great. And he was good in a movie called Fever, which was directed by Alex Winter. Unfortunately, this one is a really poorly directed film and as well as written, and it's very surprising too.
Yes.
One of the problems I had too was the tone of the film. You have Henry Thomas, who's a kind of like, I guess you say, kind of like a genetic type engineer or for a food company, and he has like a sidekick or a person like Matt Fewer, who better known as Max Headroom. And there's scenes with him that he's kind of like a punk rocker in his 40s or early 50s, and it's very, very goofy, and it's distracting from the plot. Yeah, it's just
like this random stuff that's supposed to be like character development. It's also important to know that Henry Thomas's character is kind of in a vulnerable state in his life because he just had this terrible breakup with his wife, and he has a kid through her, and it's a terribly written, terribly directed. It's one of these things, these pieces that you think is building up to a twist ending that never happens.
Oh, I agree with you. And
it just doesn't happen. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Well, that was my problem with the film. I felt the whole film was just random because it's never explained why this happens, you know. And then he falls in love with this girl, and then, you know, he's sort of going through a divorce and child custody at the same time. And I guess that was supposed to be character, but again, it adds nothing really to the story except to make him seem even more unhinged, or maybe to give a reason why he might be unhinged. But I mean, I really just didn't enjoy this episode at all. I thought it was a big waste of time. And to put a pun in there, chocolate was not very tasteful.
Oh, very good. That's a very well said, my friend. Yeah, it's really...
Simple.
Thank you.
It's really bad.
I decided that instead of watching Chocolate, I decided to eat some chocolate. So I didn't see this.
It's a terrible episode, and one of the biggest problems, I'll close up on this, is the lack of explanation. I don't need them to actually come out and say why.
It's a very half-assed episode.
Yeah, it's like they even go, well, I don't know why we're having these connections with each other. Maybe it was this and that, but they don't even give you a hint. It's just too It's just too out there in the open, and they're trying to give you an answer, but not really. It's a terrible episode, one of the weakest episodes in the series.
You're lucky you missed it.
It's a good thing Mike missed this one. That's why he didn't have to.
The chocolate was good.
Probably
like the nudity though.
All right, well, let's go on to...
well, how would you rate the nudity?
Excellent.
How was the nudity?
Excellent nudity, Mike.
That's the only reason to actually sit there and watch.
Wait, is that sarcasm?
No, it's excellent nudity. She's really hot.
I'll give it that.
It's Canadian nudity.
Bush?
In fact, I noticed that I've watched some of the second season episodes, and the Masters of Horror tend to get increase the nudity quotation with each episode.
Well, that's thankfully because of HBO.
Trying to get the ratings.
Yeah.
Not HBO, I mean, but cable television.
From Showtime.
Yeah, cable TV, man. Gotta love it.
God bless cable.
All right, well, let's go on to a different type of film here, and this will be a return to horror by a director who's dabbled in horror and comedy, and he's basically known as a comedy director, but he's actually, I guess you say, is also dabbles in horror, and the horror always has comic undertones, and that film is Deer Woman, and the director, again, is John Landis, who, of course, is well known for, National Lampoon's Animal House, and
American Werewolf in
American Werewolf in London. And this one actually...
Blues Brothers.
And the Blues Brothers, and Innocent Blood, which was another return to the horror genre. This one actually has a lot of John Landis' trademarks, including horror and humor, and, of course, there's a great reference, which I will give credit to, American Werewolf in London.
I love this episode. This was my favorite
Take it away,
episode
Jeff.
of the series. I mean, I think it started off correctly because really Brian Benben stars in it. And unless you've really watched his HBO series
Dream On.
Dream On, which John Landis produced and wrote for.
That's right. I forgot about that. There's a connection.
You probably never really heard of him except for maybe a bit rolling Clean and Sober. But I like this episode just for the fact that it mixed horror and ridiculous comedy. And I mean, it was very entertaining throughout the whole thing because even the whole premise, a deer woman, going out trampling people, is just so ridiculous in of itself. It couldn't help but be entertaining.
It's really goofy. Especially, I remember this one scene, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" They go to an Indian casino, and there's a talking deer head that tells jokes.
That's what helps add to the ridiculousness of it. It's something you can't really take. It's an
Actually,
episode you can't take
the
seriously.
ending is fairly suspenseful, though, where his friend gets trapped and realizes that, uh-oh, I'm fucked.
Like he said, I'd actually, for once, I actually like something is like when a character does something stupid, he goes, "I'm a fucking idiot." I actually like that the character admitted that for once in a movie. You never see that.
Well, it was a choice between watching this episode or actually eating a deer woman. And I decided
Wait,
to...
eating a deer woman or eating out a deer woman? Spit take! Yeah.
I did not see this episode, folks. I'm sorry.
I actually...
But I did eat chocolate.
I enjoyed it.
Well, I like some of the humor. It's very goofy and fun, but if you're looking for a real, and that's one thing. The tone shifts from place to place occasionally, but it's a better overall mix of humor and horror than.
I'm glad to hear it because John Landis has not made a decent film since Trading Places.
And even Trading Places
I agree
is
with
very
that.
dated when you watch it, but it's still got some good yucks in it.
Coming to America was good.
It was all right.
Coming to America
It was all right.
entertaining.
I'll give you that.
Hey,
I
what about
forgot
Beverly Hills
Coming
Cop 3? Oh wait, that sucks. Okay.
Of course.
Well, let's move on to the next one here.
In. But he's going to make John Landis is going to make a movie about William Gaines. Did you hear about that?
Oh yes, and I heard a rumor it's going to be Seth Rogen is playing William Gaines. That's what I was hearing as a rumor.
Now that's a spit take worthy.
Well, actually, I did see a picture of Bill Gaines years ago, and I hate to say it, he really does look like Seth Rogen years ago. I mean, go figure. All right, well, let's go on to the next one, and this is one that...
Well, by the way, did you guys see the Oscars? What's wrong with Seth Rogen? He looked terrible. He looked like a Hasidic terrorist.
well, I can't comment on that.
There was just a random.
That's random. That's completely... Okay, that was...
go with that episode.
That was derailed that topic.
I wish he would have made a man.
All right, let me go on to the next one here, guys. I'm trying to do this here. All right, the next one I will consider one of the worst episodes in the series, and I know a few people here will agree with me. The director in question actually directed one of the greatest horror films of all time. Never really lived up to his potential. Then floundered in mediocrity for many years, and is still living off this one film. And that film is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the director is Tobe Hooper.
And what's the?
And the film is Dance of the Dead, which takes a Richard Matheson story and basically bores the shit out of you for an hour. And let's get into this one. It basically takes a supernatural approach with a Mad Max type world.
Yeah, it's weird.
With goth.
It's a weird. I mean, there's one kind of compelling idea, the fact that they reanimate the dead for people's entertainment. But yeah, what happened to Tobe Hooper, man? I saw Eaten Alive the other night. What a shitty film. That was this film after Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but from
Neville Brand is just got this ridiculous performance going. I know we're supposed to be talking about Dance of the Dead.
So you're getting like my dad.
Dance of the Dead is just, it sucks.
Eating Alive is a more interesting subject than the actual episode.
I never saw Dance of the Dead, but
it's bad, dude.
But even the premise just wasn't interesting. Well, Robert Englund was in it. So
It had
that
an interesting presence. It had a sort of a compelling idea for a sort of post-apocalyptic future kind of thing, where people are just giving in to just drugs and disorder and stuff like that. But nothing. It was all aesthetics. There was no.
You never feel like you're in the future. You feel like you're in present-day golf clubs.
That's how I felt.
Right.
And one problem too is the acting is some of the worst I've seen in the series. It's totally uneven. These people are like in different films. There's only one effective scene, perhaps the flashbacks to this nuclear type apocalypse thing happening. That was actually kind of effective. However, the editing is very MTV style, and it rips off a lot from Natural Born Killers. All the scenes in the car where they're driving.
Yeah, there's a lot of like it's just a lot of scenes that rip off other movies, and there's no like original compelling vision it could call its own.
Very, very poor direction from Tobe Hooper too. The acting, as I said, is just god awful. I mean, oh god, especially the two. There's the two leads who are okay, and then you have the other two that are with them. Totally coat hangers, and they're completely just must have been picked up off the street. Yeah. Definitely one of the worst. How would you guys rate it? Is it definitely in your bottom?
It was my worst.
One of the worst.
It's your worst?
Yeah,
it's my worst personally.
Well, what do you think? Just Tobe Hooper has just got
He's
lucky
living off
on one movie?
One movie he got lucky on. And actually, he did another film that I do like, which is entitled The Funhouse.
Funhouse is all right.
It's not a bad film, but he never made anything half as good as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, maybe he's just a one-hit wonder, that's all. There are those people in film that...
It's more to it than that, but I can't discuss it on the air.
Yes, let's not discuss Tobe Hooper on a Masters of Horror film.
I will say this though, he did not. I will say this,
TV show?
he did not. He did not direct Poltergeist. He did not. He was just a director's name that was put on a project. The real
but
director
everybody
was.
knows that.
That
That's
is
nothing that you
slanderous,
can-
sir.
Yeah,
But Spielberg's always credited for directing that film.
that's
always.
Well,
was that
that's
the career-ending news that you couldn't tell us?
No, that's not it. But anyway, that actually did damage his career
Did he
quite
like
a bit.
suck your dick or something?
Hey, dude, that's no.
You're not denying it.
Now-
Too much.
Come on, Mr. Awesome.
All right, let's get into the next
Come
one.
on.
Let's get into the next one. Okay. Well,
Are you a fan of Spring Awakening?
let's bring away.
Never.
Okay.
I'll deny.
Bad inside joke.
Okay, I'm
There's
in
nothing
deep
wrong
shit
with
here.
Spring Awakening.
Thank
by
God
the
for
way.
Final Cut Pro. Okay. Next film on the list here is actually I will consider the absolute worst film in the series. The director actually made a film that I liked earlier, and he showed a lot of promise. And actually, it starred the same person who starred in this episode, which is Angela Bettis. And the film before was May. This one is entitled Sick Girl, and it's directed by Lucky McKee. And I guess you could say it takes a lot of elements that were in May and kind of changes them around a little bit and really destroys Angela Bettis. I mean, I loved her in May. I thought it was one of the best performances I've seen that year. And she completely did a 180, and I mean, this is one of the worst performances I've seen a good actress give. She really ups the lesbian content and becomes very butch and Bette Davis-like, and it's very distracting and ridiculous.
I didn't even think it was Bette Davis. I just thought she was just a very awkward, nerdy girl, and she was just failing miserably at this portrayal of this person. And to have Misty Monday involved, she's just a terrible actress. She's not even a good softcore actress. I mean, this felt to me not as a Masters of Horror interpretation, but it felt like this guy was doing something for seduction cinema. You know, those idiots with, that employ Misty Monday for every other film.
Well, as you know, they own her name, so that's why she's billed in this one.
I thought it was
Aaron Brown.
incredibly annoying. I just found myself incredibly annoyed.
Yeah.
Bad
watching this
special
episode.
effects. man.
Terrible.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very
Special
slow. It
effects.
felt like somebody's, like, with the exception, it was like somebody's school film project where they went crazy on the sex quotient.
You know what saddens me too is that there's a scene in the end of the movie where they're trying to make a statement against discrimination against gays, and there's because they live in the apartment building, and the landlord comes up to them and says, "I want you out of here because you guys are such perverts and whatever," and I was actually for the landlord because these people are so depraved and awful. I mean, I wouldn't want these people in my building either because they had all these bugs and they were just, flaunting themselves and leaving the door open in front of this girl. You're supposed to feel for these people because, their gender, and they're just being discriminated against. But you don't get that at all, and that's a really big failure on the part of the director.
I think they should have been discriminated against for horrible acting.
That's what's ruined it. It's awful, and as you said, the special effects are terrible, and all it is just a lazy rewrite of May. That's all it is.
Well, when you introduced Tobe Hooper's episode Dance of the Dead with talking about the one-hit wonder, I thought you were actually talking about this episode because it seems like this is really May was really the only good thing he's done, because I saw The Woods, I didn't like it. I saw this episode, I didn't like it, and then I saw the script that he wrote for a film called Roman where they switch places and Angela
The Woods has
Batiste
come out
directed.
already?
It's been on
So
DVD
it's
for over a
Bruce
year.
Campbell?
2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
It was supposed to come to theaters, but it got delayed.
Oh, wow. I
They
didn't think it ever got released.
They just basically said it's not good enough, and they released it to video.
And I can see why, because that didn't even have any promise either.
It's a lazy rip-off of Suspiria.
Exactly. So that's why I'm like,
And
to me,
and Suspiria doesn't even make any sense, so I can imagine a lazy version of Suspiria.
Suspiria is an art film. It's not really supposed to make sense. It's a living canvas, but that's off the subject. But the thing is that Lucky McKee, he's taking a lot of the ideas from other films and just recycling them. And then, unfortunately, this one, he recycled his other film. He recycled May.
He's a one-hit wonder.
He's not coming up with any more original
ideas.
ideas.
He's like Toby Hooper Jr.
Yeah, Angela Betta should divorce him.
I don't disagree with anything that was just discussed here.
Actually, I don't think they're married, but
Let's move on.
No, I think they are married, aren't they?
No, they just work.
They work together very well.
Very well.
Once they did.
Very well.
It's a very good film.
Well, she wasn't in the woods.
All right. Well, the next film we're going to be discussing is actually probably perhaps one of my favorites of the series. And actually, the person who directed this is, I wouldn't really consider him a master of horror. And what's surprising, he actually really made it, I think, like I said, one of the best episodes of the series. And the director is Bill Malone, or William Malone, who directed their House on Haunted Hill remake and the horrible Fear.com. The film here is entitled Fair Hair Child, which stars Lori Petty, and it concerns a girl who is kidnapped and used in a demon ritual, or I guess you could say a ritual to revive a dead child.
Well, they keep a dead child alive.
Yeah, to keep this dead child alive.
They've been kidnapping kids. So this guy can feed on them in order to keep him alive. After like so many kids, he will permanently be alive. Is the whole idea, and she's like the last person.
And yeah, you know what's so interesting about this?
And she's like the first girl, too.
Yeah, she was the first girl, which I thought was interesting because they were actually discussing.
And he falls in love.
He falls in love with her, and actually, I like the ending too in this.
Well, I'm going to say, just so we can move on, move this quickly, but I liked this episode. I thought it had some moments that were really well directed. I thought the handling of when this kid, the dead kid, turns into the demon character, I thought that was really authentically creepy.
Yeah, it's a very creepy
it was very effective. I didn't like I thought the ending got into like, I would have liked it to have been more subtle.
I would have liked to be a little bit more open.
All stuff when he transformed into a living boy again was just, it was like straight out of Pinocchio or something. That I thought was a little silly.
I still like the ending. I mean, I like the way it was wrapped up, but I wish they would have left it a little bit more open and didn't answer everything. You know what I'm saying? Because they give like a definitive answer what happened.
And I wish, and I don't know why, this is the big problem I have with like Masters of Horror and stuff like that, is that it would have been far more interesting to me if the parents, a.k.a. Lori Petty, whoever the other actor were, came across as more normal. It'd be more interesting if these are just normal parents trying desperately to keep their son alive.
Yeah, because they come off
They
a
made
little
them too much like freaks.
They come off a little psychotic because if you can love your child and be like do crazy shit.
Right.
And I'd actually like to see a normal portrayal where like these people are just normal people and they decide to do this and they don't want to do it. They're really hesitant, but they want their child to come back. But what I liked, like I said, is very well directed. Especially the flashbacks. There's a scene where the guy is actually like imagining he's wearing, like he has the dunce cap and he's in the water. It's really very eerie, very well directed.
It had great visuals in it. I don't know if it was exceptionally direct because there was parts of it which I thought were poorly directed. But I thought like anything dealing with that demon thing, I thought was really well done. I was like surprised actually how impressive that was.
And then what's so funny is it takes kind of like an idea that's been used before.
What do you think?
I thought it was entertaining, and it also had one of the most ridiculously funny scenes I've ever seen in a movie that wasn't intentional. When the girl gets hit, she's on her bike and she just gets hit by a car, and it's supposed to be something that's supposed to make you jump, but it looks so messed up, it ended up making me laugh. But other than that, it's generally a creepy episode from a guy I really didn't think had it in him, but it seemed like with this, he brought his A game with this episode, so I actually liked it more than I expected to.
And I want to say too, one last thing, final thing on this. The girl Tara, whoever played, I forgot her name, is phenomenal. Very good performance by the girl.
Oh, it was much better performed. It could have come across as cloying and silly.
She came off as
the little
very
relationship
warm.
Between her and you knew. I mean, they try to build up this twist that you find out that this kid is actually dead, but you kind of
I knew it.
out.
I knew it already because you don't see his face in the flashback, so obviously.
Yeah.
But I definitely will say, definitely an excellent performance by the lead actress, and it's definitely one of the best episodes in the series. I think you guys can agree.
Were you
on
eating
that.
chocolate during that one too?
I don't know what the fuck I was doing.
Or were you eating out a deer woman?
All right, well, we only got a few minutes left here, so let's go on to the last two here. This film is entitled Imprint, and it was director Takashi Miike's, I guess you could say, first American production. He's a respected Japanese director, very famous for the film Audition. This one stars Billy Drago in a tale of, I guess you could say it's very much like Kaidan.
Billy Drago, for those who don't know, was Frank Nitti in The Untouchables, the one that gets pushed off the building.
Very
creepy man.
Very weird film. And by the way, we want to mention too, this episode was actually banned from broadcast for being too controversial or too violent, and it's easy to see why it was banned. It's a pretty violent little tale. Now,
probably one of the most horrific torture scenes I have ever seen, ever.
Very reminiscent of the that famous scene in Audition.
Yeah.
Worse.
Almost worse.
to me.
Worse.
Yeah, it's definitely no way they could cut that down to make it airable for television, I don't think, without making the film incoherent. What I had a problem with this film is that there's a lot, I'm not a big Takashi Miike fan, I will be honest, he's not one of my favorite directors. However, I will give him credit on this one. The film is very beautiful. It does not feel like a television production, it actually feels like a film. However, I can't say I blame this on him totally. The problem is that the film was shot in Japan with Japanese actors speaking English. And it really they didn't have very much emotion because it's obvious they're speaking phonetically.
Yeah, I give it two cons against it. It should, I don't know why they felt it was so important for them to speak English. I would have been happy if it was subtitled.
So
that seems like it was a suit decision.
Yeah,
it must
obviously.
have been a suit decision. It was a stupid decision because it was distracting. I would have loved to have seen it in Japanese and read the subtitles. And two, Billy Drago's awful in it.
Awful.
Absolutely
awful.
Outside of that, this is my favorite Masters of Horror episode. I think it's the only one that fulfills the potential idea of taking like a great, so-called great horror filmmaker and doing his best thing in an hour format. And I think Miike is the only one who kind of fulfilled his potential, so to speak, in ways that the other directors just kind of missed the mark or kind of did it half-assed. You know, I thought the production values were outstanding.
It felt like a film. It felt like a real film.
It felt like a film. Visually,
Cinematic.
the art direction is outstanding in this episode.
I agree with you on that.
And
It's
yeah,
like
it's
almost
hard
like
to
a
watch.
kabuki
It's
play.
torturous. And if it wasn't for the fact that they're fucking trying to speak English when they shouldn't be,
It's really horrible.
there really is an interesting, powerful story there.
There is. It could have been.
There really
decent.
is.
There could have been decent, but that's a very big minus against it. I mean, that really did ruin it for
I
me.
mean, it's really hard to explain to I would encourage everyone to go out and see this. I don't think this is one of those things where we shouldn't give away the story.
No, I'm not going to tell anything about the story, but I will say this too. I think even you agree. I had to have the subtitles on for some of it because even though we're speaking English, I couldn't understand a lot of what they were saying. It was very bad in doing that. And also, what I did not like, and I have to be honest, there's a scene where we mentioned earlier, a torture scene, and I feel it's very misogynistic and it goes on way too long. I feel, you know, it just was enough. It goes on for maybe 5 minutes.
See, I don't know if it's, I think that's a wrong word, misogynistic. I think sadistic.
It is sadistic.
It
but
is
I felt
very...
Well, you know what though? It is sadistic.
But it fits the plot.
But it fits the plot. It's a very important plot point too, because without giving too much away, it explains why a certain person is the way they are.
Yeah, but it lingers
in
and
a
lingers
very
and
effective
lingers.
way.
It lingers on too much. I think like Alfred Hitchcock, the most disturbing thing is in your mind. You know, what you don't see. I like what's like in Psycho.
Sometimes.
I think Psycho is a lot.
I think Miike is the only one. I agree with you. I don't like torture porn.
I don't like torture.
I
That's
think
what I feel
Miike
like.
is the only director, take or leave his stuff, who can get away with it. Everyone else is trying to copy him. Eli Roth is trying to copy Miike when he does like Hostel.
Oh, it's obvious. I'll give you that.
Miike, there is a purpose behind what he's doing. It never feels exploitive to me, as unbearable as it is to watch.
How about you guys? How would you rate it on your scale? Was it one of your favorites ones?
I liked it. I thought the story was a little bit muddled.
Yeah, I
was
did
just
too.
trying to figure out some things, and like sometimes I was like wondering what the point is, but it wasn't a bad at all. I thought it was okay.
I think it's the most beautiful. I think you agree with me on that one. The most beautifully shot.
Production design.
Yeah, production design was amazing.
If you want to see a film, I think that succeeds a lot better in this type of filmmaking, without the violence, of course, is a wonderful '60s film entitled Kaidan, which is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. Yeah, in fact, many films have ripped off Kaidan. In fact, Conan the Barbarian, there's a very famous scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger, I believe, is being written in kanji. And
well, they're trying to bring
protect
him back
from
to life,
yeah.
bring him out,
and protect him from spirits.
Right.
That is taken from Hochi the Earless, which is one of the stories in Kaidan. One of the most wonderful horror films I've ever seen. It's a living canvas.
Just to forewarn you, horror fans, it's not a scary horror film. Just be aware, it's just a very poetic, visually beautiful
horror film.
Horror film.
And I want to mention too, another film that ripped off Kaidan, not to go off topic, was a movie entitled Tales from the Dark Side. The film. There's a story. Actually, I can't believe it. I believe no, it's not Billy Drago.
Actually, you know something? Conan the Barbarian didn't rip that off. That's actually in Robert E. Howard's novelization.
Well, actually, John Milius on the commentary mentions that Kaidan was his biggest influence.
Oh, but that's actually in the original story when he ran into problems with Thulsa Doom.
Well, we only have 3 minutes left, so let's run on to the last one. Sorry, the last one is entitled Hackle's Tale, which was directed by...
Didn't say it.
John McNaughton, who you might recognize from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, a very good director. This actually turned out to be, I believe, one of the strongest episodes of the series. And it's funny that the directors who are not really established as masters of horror actually did the better work this time. This one takes a Clive Barker story. And actually, I guess you say it's Clive Barker's adaptation, kind of a Frankenstein-type story of reanimating the dead. And it leads to a very shocking conclusion. It's very disturbing, including necrophilia. And
oh, yes.
It's pretty surprising. I mean, I'm surprised that this one didn't get banned from being on television.
So am I. It's very gory and
disturbing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never really wondered what zombie sex was, but this film pretty much takes care of that.
Is it like Reanimator?
No. It's like, I'll say it's just try to imagine a nymphomaniac with a whole bunch of dead people. And you actually see an orgy gangbang. It's pretty disturbing.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, what's so funny is that...
well, what's the story?
Well, it's a story about a man kind of like he wants to do experiments to bring back the dead. And, you know, he talks about Frankenstein, and, you know, because Frankenstein, they pretend is a real character in this one.
And it's a period piece.
And it's a period piece. And it doesn't. He does the experiment.
Period?
It doesn't work.
Like
so then they tell him. 18th century.
Yeah,
They tell the Frankenstein era, and because they say Frankenstein's doing these new experiments. You know, have you read about them? So, but this one, he tries the experiment. It doesn't work. So someone recommends that he goes to a necromancer, which is, you know, a person who brings people back from the dead, and he runs into this man who takes him into his house, and he finds out a terrible secret about this woman who he makes a deal with the necromancer, and I don't want to give anything away.
Did you guys like it?
I liked it. It's very disturbing, very eerie, and
I gotta rent it.
I can't say I liked it. It was disturbing, but
it's fascinating. I can't say it's great.
It's interesting.
You won't when you see it, you'll go, I've never seen that before.
Okay,
exactly.
So now, as a wrap-up, who do you think the new masters of horror are now that are not obviously making Showtime series, but who are out there that are influencing horror right now?
Well, right now, we got to wrap this up. I would say my favorite director right now in terms of science fiction, I'll be real quick, is Vincenzo Natali, who did Cube. I think he's a great director.
His new movie sounds interesting.
Yeah, he's a great director.
It's called Splice.
I forgot the name.
It's his take on Frankenstein.
But he's also doing films.
Maybe Neil Marshall, Doomsday coming out. Maybe
what about you, Jeff?
Not Eli Roth.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's
not James Wan.
There's nobody really.
Oh God, James Wan, you piece of shit.
Well, anyway, we got to wrap this up. So
the guy who did 28 Weeks Later. I don't know his name,
next week.
But I thought he was talented.
Oh yeah, Rodrigo.
He's got moxie.
Francisco Rodriguez.
You can fade us out. But yeah, I think. By my co-host Eric Cohen, Jeff Galashaw, and Mike Foltz. Today we're going to be continuing a discussion.
That's not Mike Foltz.
Well, he's over there.
Hey, that's Mike Foltz.
All right. Today we're going.
I'm not black, and I'm not proud.
Well, neither am I. Anyway, let's get to discussion today. Today we're going to be continuing off from a conversation we had a while ago about the Masters of Horror film series, and today we're going to be discussing the remaining films that we didn't get to discuss earlier around. We're going to start it off with Chocolate, which was directed by the series creator and written by him as well, and it's entitled Chocolate, and it was directed by Mick Garris and stars Henry Thomas as a person who has an extra sense that allows him to connect with a person, I guess you could say, who's kind of
these pieces that you think is building up to a twist ending that never happens.
Oh, I agree with you. And
it just doesn't happen. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Well, that was my problem with the film. I felt the whole film was just random because it's never explained why this happens, you know. And then he falls in love with this girl, and then, you know, he's sort of going through a divorce and child custody at the same time. And I guess that was supposed to be character, but again, it adds nothing really to the story except to make him seem even more unhinged, or maybe to give a reason why he might be unhinged. But I mean, I really just didn't enjoy this episode at all. I thought it was a big waste of time. And to put a pun in there, chocolate was not very tasteful.
Oh, very good. That's a very well said, my friend. Yeah, it's really
simple.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and this is the Cinefiles. Today I'm joined by a psychotic, would you say?
Well, the whole premise is he can see through the eyes of someone else, and you're not quite sure. He's falling in love with this person. She's obviously a female. He can see who she is because whenever she looks in the mirror, he can see who that person is. And then later on in the story, you find she kills somebody. So he goes out of his way to try to find her now. She lives in Canada.
Yeah, of course.
Which I love because the series is shot in Canada, so of course, why not make it Canada?
That's Henry Thomas from E.T.
Who I usually always like as an actor, but in this one I feel the entire show was
Him as
very.
an actor?
I think he's been good in a few things that I've seen him in. I mean, he's great in E.T., of course, but he's also very good in Gangs of New York, even though the movie is not that great. And he was good in a movie called Fever, which was directed by Alex Winter. Unfortunately, this one is a really poorly directed film and as well as written, and it's very surprising too.
Yes.
One of the problems I had too was the tone of the film. You have Henry Thomas, who's a kind of like, I guess you say, kind of like a genetic type engineer or for a food company, and he has like a sidekick or a person like Matt Fewer, who better known as Max Headroom. And there's scenes with him that he's kind of like a punk rocker in his 40s or early 50s, and it's very, very goofy, and it's distracting from the plot. Yeah, it's just
like this random stuff that's supposed to be like character development. It's also important to know that Henry Thomas's character is kind of in a vulnerable state in his life because he just had this terrible breakup with his wife, and he has a kid through her. And it's a terribly written, terribly directed. It's one of these things.